Hey guys, welcome back. It is Sunday, January 29th, and we're back here trying to put together another podcast. I keep saying we, I guess. I don't know. It's been a busy week, and I know that there's been a lot of things going on. Um, as much as I want to talk about some of the, I guess, the more busier topics, I really don't have the energy, and I don't think anyone else really does in terms of where the future of law enforcement is going and how we choose to navigate the challenges that present themselves very frequently. And I think there's a lot of people, and not just the law enforcement community, but just everywhere, who are kind of saying, well, what do we do? And the answer is not really there, or people don't really have the energy. So, uh, yeah, I'm going to keep sort of cross referencing my blog with the podcast. I feel that it gives the reader and the listener something to take away. And if you read both and listen, or read or listen to both, great. If not, it's fine. Um, Pick whichever one works best for you. But eudaimonia. I there's a few different ways to pronounce that, but it's a Greek word that translates to good spirit, and it's a speaking point in philosophy that has been adopted by many walks of life since its inception in around 300 BC. Aristotle viewed this discipline as the highest human good, the only good that is desirable for its own sake, rather than for the sake of something else. And if you sift through that word salad, it basically means living virtuously. Um, but I would argue that it's very important to not confuse virtue with happiness, and living virtually may actually force us to do things that would normally be hard or unpleasant to do, and in so many ways rock the proverbial boat. And this will be a crossroads that many of us will face at some point in our lives. And I guess the question I would pose to the listener is, will you be virtuous in these times of challenge, or will you choose to look the other way and assume that someone else will? And there's an old story that I think of in those scenarios that involves four people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. And for these people, there was an important job that needed to get done. Everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job and everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have. In the realm of law enforcement, that is a story that repeats itself over and over again. And the question I would pose, if you do step up to the plate and you make your voice heard in the realm of living virtuously, will you be viewed as a martyr, or will you be viewed as a heretic? And more times than not, when we do choose to voice our opinions, they are seldom heard by those who actually need to hear them. And rank and file in a paramilitary organization does, in fact, create a very wide disconnect from the boots all the way up to the brass. But your immediate supervisor should generally see and experience the same gripes or issues you do, or your team does to some degree. And the problem that sometimes stops the cause for concern is that the farther up the chain it goes, that concern will essentially be a moot point unless it affects the chain itself. And that issue as a whole is uniform for any career field that requires any sort of organization or command chain when it comes to management and day-to-day operations. But I suppose the real question would be, does the chain of command actually care, or are they simply trying to keep the ship from capsizing? My answer to that question is it's a little bit of both. And as amazing as it would be for our command staff to care about us unconditionally, that would only last for so long before it ended in complete catastrophe. And if they were to, say, cater to our every need and want, it would only be a matter of time before the ship crashed into an iceberg. Basically, they're so focused on the needs of the crew entirely, and nobody is manning the wheel. And the other extreme is they ignore the crew completely. They run the engines into the ground, and eventually the ship stops moving because the crew keeping it alive has either died from exhaustions, or the engines themselves have failed from constant abuse. And either way you slice it, both of those ships aren't getting very far and eventually will be lost at sea or at the bottom of it. And if we transition from the ship concept to, let's say, the concept of parenting, it would be the same comparison. And being overly concerned with hurting feelings or giving employees everything they want, it's the same concept of giving a child no rules and the freedom to eat ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Eventually, the child will become completely oblivious to structure and balance, and then they'll just begin vomiting because they've consumed, milk and sugar every day. The other side of that scenario is giving that same kid a piece of plywood as a mattress and an abacus for entertainment, and ice cream simply does not exist in that world. Both extremes will end in failure. If we were to introduce the concept of balance into this equation, we would find a very healthy living environment with structure and control and ice cream on the weekends. At the end of the day, though, we have to understand that this career field, law enforcement or any other career field that involves a 24-hour, 365 operation, any change or new ideas will more than likely come with some form of blowback. And the more extreme the change, the more blowback you'll probably get. But we won't know until we try, and more importantly, we won't know until we actually communicate. And communication is probably one of the most underrated tools we carry. In a world of phones and digital messaging platforms, we really lose the face-to-face interaction. And I understand that in some scenarios you want that paper trail, and if that's fine, send the email. But if you don't, talk to your supervisor, create dialogue, use that face-to-face interaction to show them that your idea is not only something that you wrote down, but something that you're passionate about. And you'd be surprised how much more powerful a memo can be when you hand deliver it and then explain it to the person. And in a time where it's already difficult to do this job, where it's pretty hard to be a cop, there really isn't any sense in making this job harder. So if you want training, ask for it. If you want policy changes, write them up. If you have a good idea, talk about it. You want to make your agency better, do it. Going back to the story of everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody, be the one who says, I got it. I can do this. I'll figure this out. I'll jot this idea down. I'll present this to my supervisors. I will try to be the change. And the worst thing that they say is no. And then you can revisit that again in a couple of months or a couple of years, whatever you think is going to be the most effective. And it's important to understand that when you're trying to accomplish something, take into consideration the entire department. Okay, where are we right now? Are we in a very tight financial year? Are we in a year that involves maybe something that we can't control, whether it's a natural disaster, or just pick and choose your fights when the time is right? And I encourage people to really focus on when the time is right, because as the individual, you might be focused entirely on what you need and want at the time, but maybe you're not considering the whole ball of wax when it comes to the entire department. And sometimes presenting things at the wrong time, you're probably not going to get the answer you're looking for, and you may not even get an answer at all because there's just so many other things going on. So do it the right way, and I promise that there will be some type of positive feedback, whatever it may be. Either it's the change you're looking for, the idea you had coming to fruition, or a simple, hey, we're going to table this for now. We got a lot on our plate, but thank you for this. We're going to come back to it. And don't be upset if you get told no. But have a follow-up conversation. Hey, what can I do better? Or what do you think I should change in this? Again, going back to that C word, communication, which sometimes is very difficult to obtain. And we find ourselves sort of, just assuming things will change, and they never do. Well, you're not going to get change unless you ask for it. Guys, thank you for listening. I'll be back next week. I have some things in the works. This is my second podcast using the new mic and the new recording software. So I think it sounds pretty good, but I would appreciate if you guys gave me some feedback. Hey, this sucks. This is good. Do you like the quality of the phone stuff better? This is definitely easier for me to put it together and not have to, use my phone, and that just takes a lot longer. Hard to explain unless you've done this before. It's just a kind of a weird situation, but anyway, the ZenCup.com. That's the website with the blog. I'm on Instagram at the ZenCup, and I have a Twitter, but I don't really tweet. YouTube, obviously you're listening to this if you're on YouTube, but yeah, like and subscribe if it's something you like and you want to subscribe to it. That's all I got, guys. I'll be back next week. On my to-do list is still something. I keep saying it's going to be funny, and it's going to be, I'm sorry, I keep backtracking on that. Let's do it next week. I'll be back. It'll be a longer podcast, but I was going to try and keep this one about 10 minutes. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.